Genesis chapter 19, and I'm going to read verses 16 and 17, and then I'm going to skip over to verse 26. And I'm reading from the New King James Version. Verse 16 says, "And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, and the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass, when they had brought them outside, that he said, 'Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest ye be destroyed.'" Verse 26, "But his wife looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt." I've entitled this sermon, "Stop Going Back to What God Has Removed You From."
All right now.
Stop going back to where God has removed you from. This is a familiar story we have all heard, where God couldn't find no one righteous in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, so he decided to destroy the two cities. And Lot and his family's there, the only righteous man. So God is removing Lot and his family out. And he tells them to get out, run to the hills, and don't look back. Don't go back. But guess what? Lot's wife looked back. She was turned into a pillar of salt. She disobeyed a direct order from God, a direct warning from God, and faced the consequences of her disobedience. See, sometimes God will take us out of a place because that place ain't no good for us anyway. But we've been there so long, that which is not good for us becomes the ordinary. We learn to accept it, that we're so worried about what's going on back here, we can't see where God's taking us to out here. See, Lot's wife was worried about, the Bible really doesn't tell us why she looked back. We don't know if she was looking back to see what God was doing. But when the Lord was giving me this, he was showing me kind of something else. Maybe she was looking back, thinking about that neighbor she was leaving behind. Maybe she was looking back at that job that was toxic for her. Maybe she was looking back for that neighborhood that was preventing her and bringing her down from doing what God had called her to do. See, God was calling her out, but she couldn't let go of what was behind to get where God was taking her to. See, today I want to talk to you about why God moves us away from people, places, and things. We must stop looking back and holding on to the people, places, and things God has or is trying to move us out of our lives. He is doing it for a reason. See, Lot's wife could not let go of what was behind her, and it stopped her from going where God was taking her to. But see, she's not the only story that we read of people doing that. The children of Israel wandered 40 years in the wilderness. The promised land wasn't a 40-year journey, church. But they couldn't stop looking at their circumstances presently and what they left behind. They started complaining and moping. And then even some of them even talked about going back to Egypt. They'd rather go back to where they were than to go where God was taking them to. See, they were so blinded. Sometimes we get so blinded and caught up in the physical, we forget about the spiritual. We're so busy looking back here, we can't get to where God is taking you to, where your blessings are. You can't get to that life and life more abundantly because you're so worried about the toxic people, places, and things that you're leaving behind. Stop worrying about what's back here and start letting God take you to where He wants to. Take you. Our Christian walk is all about continuous progress and becoming Christ-like. The ability to move forward and to achieve greatness that God has designed and called you to do. And you cannot hope to ever achieve such things if you are holding on to the things of the past. You'll never become Christ-like going back to your old ways. You'll never get to the fullness of your potential and reach the calling that God has called you to do if you're so worried about the calling that Mama wanted you to do. See, all this will do is prevent you from reaching your full potential and the things that God has for you. By holding on to past ideas, you are self-sabotaging any progress you hope to make. We are a new creature in Christ, and we cannot live the way we used to live. We can't go back to some of the places we used to hang out at. We can't be around some of the friends that we used to hang around with, because they will not let us go where God has taken us to. They'll continue to bring us back down to where we once were. See, if you desire to attain the goodness of God and the life that Jesus talked about, then you need to give up some certain things in order to fully commit yourself to God and the life He has for you.
Right now, preacher.
God moved you out of that place because that place was holding you back and keeping you from what God had for you.
Yeah.
He was keeping us from it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In our responsive reading that we read earlier and downstairs, and in Jeremiah, he said, I know the plans He has for me. They are plans to prosper me and to give me a future. There's some people out there that don't want to see you prosper and give you a future. But we serve a God that wants to prosper you and give you a future. Get our eyes off what's behind and look at the God that's want to take you forward. See, sometimes we get too dependent on loved ones that we forget that God is the only one that can make us or break us.
Well,
there ain't nobody in this world that can make you or break you. They might act like they do. It might seem like they are. But God is the only one that can make you or break you.
Yes, Lord.
He is the source of your blessings. Your loved one may be the resource, but without the source, there could be no resource.
Yes,
See,
sir.
you can always tell when God is getting ready to do something powerful in your life, because He'll start to remove people, places, and things from your life. See, sometimes it will be the people whom you depend on the most. See, sometimes we get so caught up on the person, we forget about the source that supplied the person to be the resource.
Yes,
we quit glorifying man and start glorifying the God that gave him the resources to bless you. They come from the source. See, sometimes He's got to get them out of the way where we only can look at God. See, sometimes He's got to remove all of our resources so we only have the source, and then we can say, so He gets the glory.
Preach up.
Why does God do this? Here are some reasons why God will move people out of your way. First of all, what I just mentioned, so He gets the glory.
Yeah.
Because He wants to make sure that when He brings you out of your storm, that you will not have nobody to praise but Him. If you don't believe me, just ask Gideon. God had to move over 2,000 men out of his army, where there's only 300 and some. So when they came through the battle, see, they were getting ready to face an army of thousands. But when they went into war, it looked like all hope was gone for Gideon and his men. It looked like they'd be slaughtered. But they came out victorious. And when the battle was over, Gideon couldn't praise any men in his army. His army couldn't praise Gideon because they only knew that there was only one way they made it out alive and are victorious. And that was because of the source, which was Jehovah Jireh, the one that provided it.
Yes, sir.
If you don't believe me, ask little David.
Well,
when he went out to face a Philistine giant named Goliath. Holy God. The odds were stacked against David. See, there was nobody that went out there with David. God removed all the resources. All he had was a slingshot and a little rock. Goliath was a giant with a sword. David took that slingshot and slung it. When Goliath fell, David had no one to praise and thank but God Almighty, because God was the reason Goliath fell.
Yes, sir.
When we take our eyes off the source and only focus on the resource, then God, the source, will remove the resource, the people, places, and things that we depend on.
Yeah.
And when God removes all your resources out of the way, then when you come out of your situation, you only have the source, which is God, to praise and glorify. When you lose that job, when there's no friends and family around, when the things you depend on are no longer around you to depend on, the first thing that runs through your mind will be, for the first time in your life, you have no one to depend on. People put all their trust and faith in people around them, but they never acknowledge the fact that it was God who was using them to bless them. Your mama and daddy might help get you out of a situation.
Well.
But God is the one that blessed them with the money or whatever it was to get you out of that situation.
Right, right.
Your best friend might help you out of a situation, but they couldn't help you if God didn't bless them to bless you. That job, that employer might sign your paycheck, but the source God blessed you with that job. So you might be living in a great neighborhood. You might have a way to live in a fancy house, but you wouldn't have that house if it wasn't for the source that moved some people to finance you for that house.
Yes, sir.
See, God will remove whatever gets in the way of Him getting glorified. Sometimes things are moved out of our way for our protection.
Right, right.
See, sometimes rejection is God's protection.
Say that, preacher.
Sometimes rejection is God's protection. See, because not everyone that's there for you when you're down wants to see you get back up.
Right, right, right. Right.
Not everybody that claims to be your friend
Yeah.
is your friend.
Yeah.
They might look like your friend. They might act like your friend. But they ain't your friend. Because when you leave, they're out there gossiping about you. They're telling everybody and anybody what you're sharing with them privately.
Yeah.
They stabbing you in the back. Do you think they're laughing with you, but they're actually laughing at you? Quit chasing people if God's moving them out of your way. They ain't no good for you. They're toxic. Quit chasing that baby mama that's causing you trouble. Quit chasing that no good, low-life baby daddy that's bringing you down. Let God move him out of the way so He can take you to the one that's going to bless you.
Preacher.
God's moving them for a reason. See, God places people in our lives for a variety of reasons. And some we will never know why they were there, and some will be quite obvious. One thing I've learned, though, no matter how saved and loving I am,
Well.
there's always going to be someone that's not going to like me.
Well. All right.
The bad part about it is that sometimes these people are the people we care about the most. Our friends. Well, you've changed. I don't want to hang with you no more. You changed. I don't know why you can't do this. It don't hurt to go here and do that. You can come to the club. You can order a Coke. Huh? They do. Because they want to see you get back to where you used to be and not where God's taking you to.
Right, right.
They don't want to see you advance. They want to see you back there in the same boat they are in. They're miserable, so they want to see you miserable.
Yeah.
And they'll be miserable till they receive the same God you received.
Yeah.
See, you cannot hang out with everyone. Because not everyone you hang out with is your friend. They may look like it, they might act like it, but they really not your friend. If you don't believe me, just ask Samson. He thought Delilah loved him. He thought Delilah looked good. He thought Delilah loved him. But Delilah was using him to get to the secret of his strength, to bring him down. And when he finally gave in and told her, the Philistines came in, cut his hair, captured him, tied him up, put his eyes out, because he trusted somebody instead of trusting God, and put his eyes on a woman instead of the one that was the source of his strength. We can't listen to people. We need to listen to God. He's the one that has the best interest of your heart. People don't always have. Just ask Samson.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't believe me, then if you don't believe me and Samson, just ask Jesus.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just ask Jesus, church. See, Judas acted like a disciple. Judas even carried the money purse.
Yeah.
When he sent the disciples out, Judas was anointed and was healing people and preaching the word. Judas put on a good thing. But for 30 pieces of silver, some pocket change, he betrayed Jesus with a kiss. You've got some friends that are acting like your friend, but they'll kiss you and betray you just as quick as Judas did Jesus.
Yes, sir.
For the right price. Another area that we got to be careful of is that Not everybody can pray for you.
All right. All right.
In fact, there's some people out there I don't want praying for me.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, their mouth is speaking one thing, but their heart's saying something else.
Well,
They laying hands, they're closing, they're praying for you in the name of Jesus. But that's just the words, because in their heart they're saying, Lord, curse them. You can't let everybody pray for you. Not everybody believes the same way you're believing.
Well,
Not everyone's believing and praying for the same thing you're praying for. Perfect example of that, if you don't believe me, is in Matthew chapter 9. It tells us about when Jesus went to the ruler's house and his daughter was dead. And when Jesus came to the house, he had to throw everybody out because he said the girl is just sleeping. They laughed and mocked our Jesus. He had to get the doubters out of the way. He had to get the unfaithful out of the way. And Mark, he said he just brought the parents, Peter, and a couple of disciples in with him. He had to get believers that's going to pray and cry out to God and pray for you and lift you up and exalt you. The girl rose from the dead because he had some people in there believing the same thing he was believing. You got to be careful on who you ask to pray for you. All I can say is, church, sometimes rejection is God's protection. Don't you get upset, ladies, when that boy don't pay you no attention. You just keep on going. Don't keep chasing after him and persuading him, because he's probably no good for you. Boys, all I can say to you is that girl that looks hot and you're chasing after her and she keeps telling you no. When she tells you no, don't look at her no more. She probably ain't no good for you. Her rejection is God protecting you. When you don't get that job, don't you get discouraged, because God might be rejecting you because that ain't the job God's got for you. When that apartment complex or that landlord of that house doesn't accept your application, you might think you want to live there, but that might not be the best neighborhood for you. Their rejection is God protecting you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The next reason why God might move some things and people out of our lives is to keep us focused. To keep us focused. In our Sunday school lesson today, we talked about the Apostle Paul. And when he talked about in Galatians chapter 1, verses 10 through 24, and we talked about the source of Paul's gospel. See, Paul was telling them that he didn't learn the gospels from the other apostles. He didn't go to Jerusalem. He didn't go to the seminaries. That gospel that Paul preached came directly from Jesus Christ himself. Paul, when he left Damascus, he didn't go to Jerusalem and talk to Peter, James, Bartholomew, Philip, and Matthew. He went to Arabia. See, he went to a place where there was no Christians in his ear already. He went to a place where there's no theologians around that could put their view on the thing. He went to the place where there was no seminaries to influence him. He went to a place where it was just him and God Almighty. His sermons, his gospel came directly from direct revelation through Jesus Christ himself, through the Holy Spirit. So when Paul went back, he didn't go back to anybody. He went and was equipped to start his ministry because God is the one that gave him his revelation. He didn't preach the gospel according to Peter, Matthew, James, or John. He preached the gospel according to Jesus Christ himself. See, sometimes God's got to move some things out of your way where you're alone with him so you can get some direct revelation from him. See, sometimes God has got to move you from the place to another so you can hear from him. Even Jesus had to get away from people and places at times so he could get alone and hear from the Father. The Gospels all tell us when the multitudes got so strong, he had escaped to the mountains where he'd be alone to pray. The Bibles and the Gospels tell us that he'd wake early in the morning and go into the garden by himself and be alone with the Father. Sometimes we got to get by ourselves because you got this one and that one in your ear. Well, I think you should do this. I think you should do that. And none of them even know what you should be doing. There's only one that knows what you should be doing, and that's God Almighty. So why not go directly to the source? I would rather skip all the resources and go to the source that has my best interest in mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We got to get alone. So our focus is on him. You got to get your focus off your surroundings. You got to quit looking at the physical and what's going on around you. You got to quit looking at what's behind you and start looking at the source that can take you to some great things. Because when you get your eyes off man, when you get your eyes off your circumstances, and you start looking at the source, he'll take you to places you never thought you could go.
Yes.
You'll start doing some things you never thought you could do.
Yes.
You'll become things you never thought you could become. Because you're following the great I am. And the great I am, there is nothing, because how excellent is his name. Because sometimes our loved ones become more of a distraction than our enemies do. They really, truly, sometimes people has what they think is best for you. And they're trying to do it with best intentions. But church, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
All right. All right. Woo.
There's only one way to find out what you need to be doing, and that's to get on your knees and talk to your source.
All right.
See, that is God's way of keeping you focused, is when he removes some things. So today I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this as we leave here today. Here in just a minute, I'm about done. Where does God fit in your life? Is he number one? Is he number two? Or is he number three? Or a better question would be, is he even a priority in your life at all? See, sometimes we place our relationship with God on a back burner without even realizing it. We don't give it our all like we do everything else. We got to try not to be focused on earthly relationships that you forget about your relationship with God. And we need to switch the energy you currently are putting into your distractions and refocus it where it's needed, and that's on God. We make all the excuses in the world why we can't be at church. But we need to be telling the things in this world, giving them the excuses why we can't go there, and we need to be at church.
Well,
do you know that he loved you so much that he sent his only begotten Son? Do you know that Jesus came down from heaven, left his glory, wrapped himself in flesh, and died on Calvary's cross?
yes, he did.
He laid in a borrowed tomb on Friday and Saturday. And early Sunday morning, he got up with all power and glory. He just did not get up to save you, church. He got up when he died on Calvary's cross. The temple veil was ripped from top to bottom. That you can go into the source, the Holy of Holies, and have a personal relationship with the Father. So the question is, why don't we want to build that relationship that Christ died for? Amen. I love you, church.
Amen. Amen.